Mode. There you go.
Okay, I think we're all here. Well, this is the February 22nd meeting of the Mobility and Parking Board. It's a regular meeting and the time I've got is 5:16 approximately. And so let's go around and do introductions, starting in the upper left-hand corner with you, Joy.
It's Joy Porter, citizen of Manitou.
Bill Kerner, citizen. Roy? Roy, can you introduce yourself? We lost audio.
I can hear you, Bill.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, Rolf Jacobson here. I'm a member of the board.
Okay. We also have Carl Stang. We've got Luke Prince.
Hi,
and
everyone.
we've got-
Luke Prince.
Yep. And for a few minutes, we got Leslie Lewis joining us and Corey Sutella. Corey is still there. He's probably getting out of his car, and James Kellerman. So thank you all for attending. And the first item of business is to review the agenda and approve it. And I'm looking for a motion of approval.
Bill, I'll move that we approve the agenda as written.
Thank you, Carl. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Joyce seconded. All in favor? Raise your right hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, Corey doesn't record his vote. He's probably between his car and his house or something. So that passes 5-0. And the next item of business is approval of the minutes of our November MAP regular meeting. Did anybody have any changes to the minutes? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve as written.
I move that we approve the minutes as recorded.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you, Carl. All in favor?
Hey,
Please
Bill,
say aye.
Bill, this is Corey. This is Corey. I'm still driving. Did I read right in the minutes that we did not approve our minutes from October?
Yes, that is correct. There was a motion, it was seconded, but a vote never occurred. There was an interruption and it wasn't voted on.
So what are we going to do about that?
Well, we can recollect our November memories about, did we have any objections to the minutes of November?
Based on the minutes, no, it seemed like there wasn't any comment. No one commented on issues.
Okay, well then,
But
Well,
ahead.
as I read what was in the minutes, is there were amendments and there was a motion and a second, but I didn't know that we didn't vote.
I didn't either. Okay, do we have let's see, the protocol says that we would have to review those minutes. What we can do, since this is probably the last meeting in a while, that we could do an email and vote and send your emails to James or Roy, and just saying you approve or you don't approve the minutes. Go ahead, Carl.
Can we confirm that the Corey's requested change is actually reflected in the October minutes now, the PPA CG study discussion?
yeah, I can double check on that really quick.
I mean, that would be the critical point, I think, at least for me, before wanting to vote.
Yeah, I
Right.
think we should send those out again. And I'm not actually sure if we have a facility for voting online on this board. I'm not aware if we do or don't.
I think we do, based on past experience. We can do an email vote. But that probably needs to be looked into by authorities that are brighter than I am about that particular topic. I seem to remember we've done it before, but that's a long time ago. Suggestions on how to proceed? Do you want to send the minutes out again? And we'll review them and just go through that process and record a email vote. Does that work for everybody?
I could also, Bill, I could check with Denise and see if
Okay,
there's any protocol we have to do, and then I can email you and we can talk about how we can remedy this, if that works.
that sounds good, Roy. I like that as a solution. Okay,
Thanks, Roy.
okay, well, let's move on. The next item of business. Is public comment on non-agenda items, and we do have some public joining us tonight. Leslie, do you have any comments you'd like to make? Leslie? Are you there?
When it's hard to get the click to the unmute button. No, Bill, I am good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments that anybody has as a public citizen? Corey? Hearing none. We'll
I
close
wouldn't have
that.
any. If I have got comments, I'll share them in board correspondence.
Very good, thank you. Okay, under new business. Map board priorities. I recently, just today, sent out a memo on 2023 goals. And I think we can talk about that as part of Roy's discussion later on the agenda, if that's acceptable to people.
Sure.
Anybody have a comment or thought? Did
Well, I don't
anybody
think
get
it-
the email?
I don't think
Go
it would
ahead.
make sense to have the conversation without Roy's topic. That's for sure.
Exactly. Exactly.
And Bill, I believe on my PowerPoint, I took from your list anyway, and that's part of that PowerPoint that I'll have.
Good. Yes, Carl.
Bill, you said that you sent out an email on,
Yes, I did. To
I
the
don't know
board.
that I received that email.
Okay, well, all the more reason for just proceeding the way Roy has just suggested then,
Okay.
if that's acceptable to everybody.
It is.
Anybody
Yeah,
have a
just
problem
for
with
the
that?
record, I also didn't see anything.
Okay,
I wonder, Bill, if you sent it maybe just to me?
I got it. I'm reading it right now.
You are? Okay.
Well written, Bill. Thank you for the time you put into that.
sure.
Very well thought out and
Okay. Well, maybe it's worthwhile sending out again, just as a matter of information. And we can incorporate those comments as part of Roy's presentation later on in the agenda. Is that acceptable to everybody?
Yes.
If it's easy, I'd love to see what you wrote. If you can shoot it over.
I'll
to me
send it
right now.
again.
Yeah, if that's easy for you, I'd love to see it.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, probably an important discussion needs to occur now. Item number 4 under new business. Discussion and vote on map board meeting suspension until the fourth quarter of 2023. This is a request that has come to us from the city. I've talked to the mayor about it, and he had no problem with honoring the staff's request to suspend our meetings until later in the year, and that would be the fourth quarter of 2023. So I'd like to open the discussion and hear what the rest of you feel about proceeding on that path. The genesis of this, or the impetus for it, is to give staff more time to perform critical duties that have been heaped on them. We don't have a public works director at this point in time. We have a lot of problems going on with water systems and you name it. It's there. And so the request has come forward to us to suspend our operations until the fourth quarter of 2023. Yes,
Well, I
Joy.
also think that it's not just the workload. I think that's a very respectful request, but it's also because I think as a group, we are the crossroads. We've accomplished a lot of things lately since SP Plus has been involved with us. I also think that as Roy has sent out, Director of Transportation is going to be hired. And I really think, at least for me, that when I'm on some committee or commission, I really want to be doing things. And I think we're sort of at a crossroads. We've accomplished a lot. We're just sort of, even this meeting where we're just discussing something and then we're moving on. I really see this as a good thing for us to do, to take it. It's not just the workload. I think it's also with the Director of Transportation coming on, what that means for us, the direction we might go. So there's a lot of issues coming up, and I can see the suspension as being beneficial to not only the staff workload, but also to us as a group.
Thanks for your comments, Joy. Other comments? Come on, somebody's got an opinion about this.
Hey, Bill, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Corey. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with what Joyce said about the big changes that will be related to having a new transportation director. I think that's a really positive move for our community. I'm excited about that. I want to clarify, one of the things you mentioned, Bill, was the fact that we don't currently have a public works director. As I understand it, there's not a plan to have a public works director. There will be a new transportation director and a restructuring of the public works department. And in effect, Roy, as the assistant or the deputy administrator, will be effectively the public works director until further notice. So I want to make sure everyone on the board and the public understands that we're not waiting for that situation to change. But there's a major change coming with the transportation director. I would like to offer the alternative. I really believe that yeah, I think we're at a crossroads where we're trying to decide what should this board do. I think the voice of this board as an advisory council and as a voice for the public and the citizens of Manitou is really important. And so basically what I would like to propose is we relieve staff of a burden of having to support the committee until October, but that we continue to meet according to our schedule. We could possibly find a volunteer who would be willing to take minutes, not make major changes or directions or suggestions. But I think what our focus should be, as we welcome our new transportation director and prepare for the future, is that we should try to build a connection of the citizen voice. So that's the MAP board with the URA, the Metro District, the Chamber, and other community and citizen groups in Manitou. And so use this as a time to strengthen connections with other relevant stakeholders in this space. And then when we get back together and we've got full staff support again in October, we'd be ready to be ready to act on those improved relationships that we've built.
Corey, I think, I'm going to disagree with you on some of that. Either we're a committee or we're not. I don't see it's beneficial. If people want to go have coffee with some other boards and they want to talk to people and they want to build their relationships, but I'm on a board and I don't want to be something without minutes, without staff support.
Just to clarify, I'm not saying not minutes. We would take minutes. We would take minutes for our meetings.
I just think without the oversight of city council and staff that, if you want to meet socially and talk and build relationships, I think you should go ahead. But I'm a member of a board and I would not be doing that.
Right. Right. Comments?
Hey, Bill, this is Roy.
Yes.
I do believe that, and I can look it up while we're still talking, but I do believe the code requires staff support for a board. So I don't think that's an option to have a board run without city staff involved.
Please double check that, Roy. My intention is to try to reduce the burden. What I've heard is that preparing staff reports and taking minutes are the two major things. And so if there's a way we could do it in a way that doesn't have a major negative impact on staff, I'd like to better understand that. Thank you.
Okay, well, let's go around and get each member of the board to express their thoughts and opinions. And Carl, could we start with you?
Yeah, thanks, Bill. So my thoughts are as follows. You know, I fully respect the work level that city staff has. I'm in awe. You know, they put in a lot of hours and dedication for the city. And so I definitely don't want to be a burden on them, right? And so, you know, I'm sympathetic to the request, but I'm also, it pains me, right? Because I think citizen feedback on mobility is important for Manitou Springs. And so I don't want to lose that opportunity, and maybe putting it on hold for a couple months isn't the end of the world, but just, you know, hey, mobility issues aren't going to go away for this summer, right? It's going to continue to occur. So, you know, I'm a tiny bit troubled about us not having input for the city. But on top of that, I also feel like I don't think city council really values this board. And so maybe this is the opportunity for city council to reflect on what they want from this board and how we can actually contribute. Because if I'm going to be involved, I want to do something meaningful. And I have, you know, over recent times, it feels like we've kind of been spinning and not really accomplishing much. And so that's a bit frustrating. So, hey, taking a break so we can kind of reset isn't a bad thing. And my final comment is slightly off topic. I did take a look at the transportation director job rec, and, you know, just my 2 cents from the cheap seats is it feels more like a parking director than a transportation or mobility director, but somewhat unfair. But, you know, you read through all of the requirements and what we're looking for, and it's just, you know, if you were to do a word map, parking would stand out dramatically, right? So I don't think it's a 100% accurately labeled position, but anyways, that's neither here nor there. So sorry, my thoughts, Bill.
Thank you, Carl. Rolf, your thoughts?
I could agree with this for the reason of the staffing issues, since we have a tremendous amount of leadership turnover right now, which is unfortunate. And going through this, I don't like the idea of it that long a time not meeting. We are the only board who has been tasked for mobility and transportation and parking. So I hate to see this just be put off until October. That's a long time for us not to at least talk to. We are the representatives of the citizens, and to be able to talk to staff about it, not necessarily just kind of being a double check, I think. And so I don't really like the idea of disbanding. I don't like the idea of putting off until October. I think that is too far. I think it would be better to meet quarterly and continue on that, and try not to tax the staff as much as we have.
Okay, thank you, Rolf. Luke.
Yeah, I've always thought it's important to involve all the stakeholders. And while I 100% understand that this board is made up of residents, I think talking about mobility and parking, but keyword mobility, needs to talk to all the stakeholders, because at the end of the day, the people that are impacting the mobility around Manitou Springs are not residents, right? And so we need to talk to the people the businesses, right? I really do. I think it's really important that those stakeholders have a seat at the table. What that looks like going forward, I don't know. I'm not saying that I have the golden answer there, but I do think it's very important that we talk to all stakeholders, and then that includes the folks running the incline, right? That talks with our partners of Colorado Springs. It really incorporates everybody involved. It talks to the buses, Mountain Metro. It talks to Metro District, right? Rolf, I love the fact that you're sitting on this board, but if you weren't, there's a huge disconnect there, right? So moving forward, it's super important that this group, whatever it looks like, has representation from every single stakeholder. And that's the intention of the group, is to have representation from all of those groups. So yeah, does this board need to be rethought as to what its mission and vision is? Sure, I can get on board with that. Disbanding for the entire summer, I kind of agree with the others in that that's a very long time. But there's also, you know, I don't want to beat a dead horse there, but those are my biggest things, is really making sure that all stakeholders are involved. I mean, we've got Pike Ride. That is such a cool, unique thing, right? And I want their involvement in as much as possible. Let's get multimodal happening. Corey, I love the fact that your organization is represented here in some capacity, right? The fact that you're on both boards. I mean, I think it's really great that those type of organizations have a voice in mobility here on the board. So that's my sense, is moving forward, making sure that everybody's represented.
Well, my views are somewhat mixed as well. I do highly respect, though, the work that staff has done, will be doing, and the workload that they're enduring. And I sort of put that as probably a very important component. I'm concerned about the loss of public input. I'm concerned about losing impetus to move forward with some of the mobility ideas we have. And also, I'm rather disappointed in City Council not really wanting to take advantage of the expertise that we have in these areas and putting it to use. Certainly there's questions that have plagued us for, oh gosh, many years. And that is the congestion, the loss of mobility, if you want to call it that. That's in effect what it is. The fact that the people that I know that when I bring up, gee, why don't you go and shop in Manitou Springs, they say, oh no, I don't want to do that because it's too congested and I can't get anywhere and I can't find a parking space and blah, blah, blah. And they just sort of fade us away from reality. And I think we've got to change that. You can live and you can die. And I've seen it both. I've been here for 44 years or something like that. And I remember when I first moved to town, there were broken windows all over town and brown paper in the shops, and the town was going nowhere. And we're not going to go back to that, but we've got to remember what we came from, and we've got to make improvements to the problem areas that we really have problems with, and congestion, traffic, and parking are certainly that. And I think the mobility component is key to improving the situation. It's probably not going to solve it. Everybody's going to be in their car still, but we've got to do a better job of doing that. And if City Council is not respecting what we're offering them, I'm concerned about a relationship with City Council, and where is these things that I regard as very important, and that's why I'm on this board, is to try to improve things. And I think we, at some point, and maybe, I don't know, it's coming soon, but there's got to be an overall agreement. One of the things that really made me think a bit was when we had the progressive parking discussion with City Council. That to me was a success. We were able to put that in place and convince council otherwise, because they were all set to just drop it, at least in my opinion. And a better connection with city council, I think would be really be very helpful in improving our situation. So I'm sort of, and I've sort of shifted a little bit in my views, but I do respect the fact that staff has asked for a break over the summer so they can get some of these things done that they want to get done. And I think after we look at Roy's presentation, I think we ought to take a vote. In fact, I've got it on the agenda, and I think because staff, I think we owe that to our staff to listen to what they have to say and their reasons for essentially proposing this change. So if that's okay with everybody, we'll go through that presentation, and then I would like to take a formal vote, yes or no. Do we disband? Do we put it off to October or later in the year? Do we meet quarterly and see where things shake out? Is that a reasonable approach for everybody?
Bill, I would just like to say something, because
Yes.
it's bothering me. You know, I go to all the city council meetings by Zoom and I listen, and I feel that they do value us. And I really feel that they have supported us. And
Okay.
it is their role as elected council members to look at the whole city and sometimes disagree with us. So to say that they don't value us or that they don't support us, I would say, you know, I would disagree with that.
Okay.
I think
That's
people
fair.
get into habits and have myths about city council this or that, or they don't like an opinion. And I don't always agree with all the things they decide. I don't really like more cement in the town, but I also understand that they're looking at a bigger picture. So, you know, I don't think it helps us when we say and judge the city council, because I don't think that's the best. So I just wanted to say that, and otherwise I agree with listening to Roy and then moving on with the vote.
Thank you, Joy.
Mhm.
Okay. Was there anybody else want to weigh in on when we vote? Okay, let's move on with the agenda then. The next item is, well, I jumped over priorities, but I think we pretty much looked at that whole thing. Does anybody want to talk about priorities for 2023? Other than what we've already discussed? Hearing none.
Bill,
let's-
I just want to, I mean,
Yeah,
we
go
haven't
ahead,
really
Troy.
we haven't really had that discussion yet, right? That was going to be part of our planning session in January, was to set our priorities for
It
2023.
was,
So I
yes.
saw that there were some things written in the agenda. To be honest, I haven't had really enough time to really go through them. And if there's a proposal to stop the committee till October, I don't know why we need to go in detail into these proposals. I mean, maybe what I prefer is that we'd have a chance to maybe review them and provide some input and feedback.
That sounds fine. Yes, Carl.
Sorry, I gotta get my mouse over there. I was gonna suggest, I mean, if we do put the board on hold until October, you know, could we schedule October to be our you know, our retreat and go through the goals during that meeting, right? As kind of the fourth quarter kickoff. To talk about them now, if we're gonna, you know, take the summer off, is kind of, we're all gonna forget by October, right? So,
Right, and things change.
and
Yeah.
things change, exactly, yeah, so.
I'd like to add to that, though. I think that when we meet again in October, if that's the case, we're not going to be talking about goals. We're going to be talking about what the new structure looks like. We're going to be talking
Right.
about what has happened all summer. I don't think that's going to be any time to talk about, hey guys, nice break. What do we want to do now? It's going to be, hey, what did we miss? And what is now needed of us? I think that's going to be the discussion that happens in October. All due respect, Carl.
Yeah, I think you're
Rehashing
right.
the goals.
Yeah, we look at the situation and we see where we go from there. So having said all that, I'd like to move on to item 5 or item 4, which is Roy's presentation. And Roy, how do you want to present this? Do you want to just flip up the slides and split the screen, or? what do
Yeah,
you-
yeah, I'll pull up the PowerPoint and kind of just go through
Okay,
that. But before I do that, I did find the code. The staff liaison role, the city administrators shall assign personnel to assist boards and commissions with budget proposals or any other duties as necessary for the boards or commissions to adequately perform their functions. So I do believe that Denise will require, if we have an official board, that staff will support the board. At what that level means, I don't know, but it is a requirement. So we would.
But just to clarify, Roy, it doesn't say they need to attend meetings. It says they should support them with budget and any other activities.
Right, I'd have to ask Denise what that is, but I can tell you right now, the expectations is always that we go to the meetings, we set up the meetings. And now we don't have to take notes. It is in the code that says that the chair can assign a non-staff member to do notes, and I know Parab does that, for example. But I believe we would have to attend the meetings. So again, but I'll check on that, but I'm pretty sure because that's what I've been told for 5 years now or longer. So I think we'd have to be there. But just so you know, it is in there that we have to support it, and that the level would be, I guess, Denise's decision on that. So okay, let me bring up this PowerPoint. Let's see here. Let me know if you all can see it.
I can see it.
yes.
Okay, so basically, I'm just gonna go over, and I probably missed a couple things because when I started doing this, I was like, wow, there was a lot accomplished. And I will tell you, most of these ended up coming through the TMMP. And for those who don't know, that's the Transportation Mobility Master Plan that was approved in 2019 by council, and then was assigned for staff to implement. And through that, when we hit roadblocks, we had to at times go to the MAPS board and bring up the information and try to get support. But our mandate was that we start implementing ideas in the TMMP and get them moving. So that's what we ended up doing. So some of the things, of course, was the mobility boulevard on El Paso. We did street calming, which was street diets and signage to try to make it more mobility friendly, which was accomplished. Is it at a perfect place? No, we can always make things better, but definitely has improved the width for the bikes and pedestrians who walk that area. And we got some compliments as well as on Becker's Lane. Rear diagonal parking. We did that and did it as a pilot. So far, real successful. And the biggest part was educating the public how to use them. And we're almost at 100% compliance now of actually parking rear angled. And that was also, it's been proven to improve bike and ped safety, and it increased some of our capacity in town, which, instead of building a garage, it helped us a little bit in just increasing our capacity. And that still always has to be balanced, but that was the test, working pretty well. 7-Eleven employee lot is.
Sorry, Roy, excuse me, Roy, could I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
At what point would you consider that no longer a pilot? Because I agree, it seems like it's been successful. I'm interested to know if we've got data about bike and ped safety. It seems like it's working, but when do we stop calling it a pilot and say that that's been implemented?
I think anytime we need to just talk to council. I don't know so part of that is going to be, does council like it? What do they think about it? Do we want to expand it? Do we want it gone because people don't like it? So at some point here, we just need to bring it back to council, the staff does, and ask them what they thought of the pilot and give them the data and show the pictures and the use. I know we haven't, as far as I know, with the police department, we haven't had any ped or bike accidents in that location. Early on, I think we had one car incident from someone looping around the wrong way, but that occurred early, talking to CDOT. But it is something at this point we're going to need to bring to council to see if, do we want to expand it some down Manitou Avenue, or is that all they want? Is that section, or do they want to remove it because they don't like it? So So that's gonna be moving at some point. I don't have a date yet though, Corey.
Okay, yeah, and thanks for that. And yeah, it's just more like the process I'm interested in. So we did a pilot. We think it's successful. When do we call it forever? And the exact same question will apply to the Pike Ride and micro mobility pilot, right? When do we say that we're past the pilot stage? So anyway, that'll be an interesting discussion for future. Thank you.
Yeah. And just so you know, we're past the pilot stage on Pike Ride and other mobility. And we're actually expanding Pike Ride, working on that now with a grant.
This slide still calls it a pilot. I see in the other column.
Okay, then that's incorrect now because the pilot ended from the initial set from planning department on this program. And we had to make a decision to move forward already last year when their pilot ended by that ordinance from city council.
Okay,
So,
well, that's great. Thank you.
yeah, you're welcome. So we're and I'll cover that in a minute too, because that's exciting. So again, 7-Eleven parking and an event overflow, for example, we just used that this past weekend and we did reservations out there and had 100% reservations performed at the 7-Eleven. So that kept some cars out of the core for the event, the carnival event this weekend. So there's some proof now showing that the satellite parking can be beneficial, no different than the coffin races that the chamber did a super job of setting up and staff supported everywhere we could to make that work for the coffin races. So we definitely see some future in how we do satellite parking and shuttles. The incline reservation system was one of the first improvements of metering the use of the incline through reservations. And now instead of 1,500 people using the incline per day, we track about 800. Granted, there's probably some people that use it without following the rules, but we have determined that's not a high number. So that has reduced our parking and congestion problem to a degree and was a big one for the city to get going. As you know, we moved the mobility and parking department under the city now, which has benefited the control of parking and how we handle customers, how we deal with the resident program, and things we've implemented are working in a good way. Also into an enterprise, so that's going to help us as we move in the future with some money to take care of more things in mobility. Hiawatha parking improvements, as you know, they continue to work on more mobility in that area, which will continue in the next year or two as we look at bathrooms. We have that bank soon, the Chase Bank, which will be looked at as well. It's going to be a temporary parking office, but as the future moves on, we're not sure how that will be tied into mobility. But that's exciting, and it's still going to be worked on by the Hiawatha group, or if they do not work on it, then they'll be looking probably at a group to take over from there to look at mobility and transportation, which of course I would highly recommend. We have a couple folks from this crew on there. We have the Ruxton paid on-street parking was removed, was a success as well to help with, we don't want to encourage parking up there. So the idea was pulling that off, which we did that early, actually before the pandemic already, and has a lot of compliments from folks who live on Ruxton. MAPS area, daytime parking, evening. Once MAPS was completed, we implemented an RPP program in the evenings for folks and then have daytime parking there, which has gone well. As you all know, we started a honk reservation system at pilot at Hiawatha, and it worked over the summer. So we plan on bringing that back, considering advancing that maybe to some more stalls because it was successful.
Excuse me, Roy. Sorry,
Yes.
just a question. Could you just review, in case, I'm not saying I don't know, but let's say not everybody knows what honk reservation system is. Does that mean people drive up and honk their horn?
That's it's a great question, and I tell you, as a city, we always do that. We just say these names and expect people to know, just like the street light program, and they're like, well, how do street lights do this? But it's actually just a program. And so honk is a software program, and it allows us to make reservations online. So what's nice is then we put out the information, the links, like we did this past weekend, And we get, whether they're businesses, whoever to promote it or we promote it. And then people can reserve a parking spot. And then it saves them that parking spot in that lot. And then they go in and they can park and use it. So it's a reservation system that now we have tested. We know how to use it. We're looking at, and I'm going to cover that in a minute, in 2023, some of the plans, but look at, should we try it at bar? It would require a staff member, but we are considering that might be worth it to have reservations up at bar lot versus cars going up and circling in bar. So we've actually been real impressed how this is working so far. And in the future, some things I already researched is that they're looking at through satellite systems that all cars naturally have a parking system on their vehicle, and they don't, all they do is decide what spot they want that's available, and it saves it for them. I mean, there's really exciting things coming in to help with reduce congestion and get people from driving in circles. But that doesn't take away, of course, the fact that mobility and scooters and bikes, all those are making a big impact now too, and growing. So it'll keep going in the right direction as we need to. So,
and this is probably administrative, but I'm very curious. It sounds like a great system. I hope it expands. Do we pay honk, or is there a fee to honk, or how does that work?
Yeah, honk just takes a fee, a small fee per transaction, and it's I don't know, maybe it's I'm not sure, $3 maybe. I can't remember when we did that a year ago. But they just do a small fee, and we don't have to worry about anything else. So it's been great system because there's nothing else we have to worry about with that.
Thanks for explaining. You're
welcome. Progressive parking program, which as Bill mentioned, at the end of the day, we needed the board to support us on this. We're seeing the percentages for the core starting to drop on occupancy with the price increases. We have good data now that we can track it. Over the next few months or year, we'll have a good quarterly tracking on percentages drop based on increase in price that will show whether it's working or not. And so we're excited to be able to present that, because I think it's important to see its success or if it's not. And if it's not, is it due because the price still being too low, or is it due to something else? But at least we'll have data to decide that and see how is it working. But as you know, the price determines the demand. And so, as you all know, with this whole program, it seems to be working at this point with some preliminary data that I'm seeing from the first time we had the first price implementation, and as we're increasing it. This summer will give us a lot of data on how that works. And just something else, again, this kind of goes off into 2023, but with a lot more research that staff has been doing, we've been looking at how to get the message across on areas and the cost and even where to park. And so one of the things in California that we found is it's going to be a good way, I think, for us to let people know where they're parking, is just painting the curbs green. And then possibly on there having little stamped, and we already talked to Becca from the art district, little stamp like 3 on the curb means that it's a little higher, it's a higher priced area. But when people see the green curb, they know it's parking. If they don't see green curb, they know they're in a residential area and it's not the park. Yellow, of course, has its caution. You can't park there. Red means fire. But this would give an indication, and then we can sign it too, where people understand the pricing range better. So we're looking at ways trying to do that as part of the progressive parking program, because that's been, if anything, probably one of the weaknesses. But people do, they look at it and they see the price and they remember next time. So over time, we're finding that they're starting to think about, how do I save $1 and maybe park in Hiawatha or further down east. So that's our goal, to keep pushing them out of the core the best we can. Our RPP online permit program and increased enforcement in the neighborhoods has been, we've seen a slowdown in complaints on overflow parking. So parking staff's doing a wonderful job. And the online permits, even though we need a little tweaking going into next year, we found a few things we got to improve, but we'll continue having an online program for them. Parking logic signage, web-based occupancy maps were put in, which are still functional and running, helping with control. And from an environmental standpoint, we recently put timers on the outside perimeter ones that shut off at nighttime to try to do good for the environment and the animals because of the nighttime lights. Improve signage in the neighborhoods and downtown. We have actually a good budget to improve the signage, which when we go into 2023 or stuff, when I go to that slide, I'll talk about some things that we're going to be doing in 2023. And then the bike ride pilot and the rickshaw, I guess I call it, but that a private pilot program for mobility has been very successful. The private business wants to continue on next year. They would love to expand if possible. And again, we're okay with that. Charge them the appropriate fees to use the area that they want to use. The Pike Ride program is expanding and is no longer a pilot. And we are looking at parking spots. Currently, Lulu's supposed to come back. Lulu's there on the east side. We also have the Shriver Park one, but we're going to move it where the old bus stop is by the marquee sign, because there's an empty space there for that, so it's more visible for folks to see the bikes. We're gonna put a Pike Ride somewhere around Soda Springs Park, possibly on the corner of Park and Manitou Avenue. We're considering Smithsney, but we have not talked to the Metro District yet, but somewhere in that area. And then we're considering the old COG, not the COG, but the Iron Springs area, that old bus stop, and putting a Pike Ride up there. So right now we're working with Pike Ride on a grant to fund this, and then the city's gonna support too as well, like all cities do with these kind of programs. So the idea is we are expanding the mobility and excited to get that going. So that's the 2020 implemented things. I'm not sure if I missed anything, but a lot of things have occurred, and a lot was through that TMMP. That was, and I know Bill was a big part of that. I'm not sure how many other folks on this board joined the TMMP. Maybe Joy's been around a while, but they were part of the TMMP process. And then that was implemented and told the staff to move. And that's what we did. So that's where a lot of that stuff kind of just happened. But the talk about that a little bit, and I guess I should talk a little bit about, in some ways, frustration for staff and maybe even the board at times, is not that council doesn't appreciate the boards. They do. However, the connect on how we do this information, how we process it, and how we get it back and get it implemented seems to have problems, because many times we were directed to move on something right away, but then I had to wait to bring it to the board the next month, and it was already implemented. And that's frustration for the board not to have input. And so part of that, this break time, is to talk about, if we're going to have a board, and any board, if they all have to face the same questions, how do they trust the board enough, I guess, or whatever you want to call it. I'm not sure why it goes in this different way, but how do we bring the information to the parking board and then bring it to council? Or does the parking board need to meet with council quarterly or something? If you look at the code, it talks about the board presenting to council. I mean, it talks about that. So maybe that's the missing component. But there seems to be some disconnect, and boards go there and really there's not until that moment, then a connection, but then a lot of maybe too much discussion at times, because it's new and they want to move on it and they can't, and then delays things. So we have to find maybe a better way to make this work. And that's truly part of the goal over the summer here, is trying to figure out how does that work so that this board could bring the information, the ideas, with staff, and then the council goes, all right, great, or has questions and challenges, and that's okay. But it just seems like it doesn't always happen that way. And sometimes it happens the other way. And then it says, well, what is the board for, the map board, if I'm bringing them things we're doing and they didn't have a say in it? So it's been frustrating for us. And I'm going to have a lot of conversation with Denise, possibly the mayor, and how does this board supposed to work? And if council wants to be with their hands in all of mobility and parking right now, which is their choice, then the board doesn't have to function until after they're ready to say, okay, we did what we wanted to do. Now board will continue the processes. And so that's part of my spiel there. But let me continue on with now for 2023, because there were goals that were presented to council by Bill in 2022 of the 2023 plan. And this was brought, I believe, Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure this was brought to this board and was talked about. And so these are the goals. And then what I plan on doing over the summer. But goal 1, continue developing El Paso mobility recommendations. So over the summer, we'd keep the current street diet in place, of course, add mobility signage as needed, especially on Garden of the Gods Place, which it doesn't exist, to possibly get people a detour off of Manitou Avenue where it ends at the pool, you know, where it suddenly goes into, you're in the street because there's no more bike lane. And then connect Lover's Lane to Cannon. So we already plan on putting some sharrows out there, possibly paving that road and fixing it up so it's smoother and we don't have as many problems, and making that a safe alternative if people want to go on that roundabout way versus on Manitou Avenue. It doesn't take away Manitou Avenue. It just maybe gives a safe area, maybe that's not as compact and crowded as Manitou may be. And then, of course, we can continue on the discussion how we're going to move forward in mobility in Manitou and maybe have a mobility boulevard or something. But in the meantime, we got to keep safety going. We got to try to keep going and holding on to things we've improved. Goal 2, expand the use of data sources for future decisions. We're going to have more data than ever before. Parking logics, smarking, which is proven to be really valuable in obtaining parking data at our different zones. We're going to be adding BAR to that. So that's going to be very helpful to see what BAR is happening at BAR. We have the street light program. Again, that's not the street lights themselves. That's an actual software program, web-based, used by PPRTA, which is the Pikes Peak Rural Transportation Association, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, Corey. I think you know what that means too. So, but they paid for that. So we're using that. And we are looking at how we can increase or put that mobility option in there, which I believe I did ask you all if you wanted to support that. And I don't think we had we didn't do it at the time. So I don't know, but I may be able to see. And I think, Corey, you were going to check to see if PPRTA would support the mobility option.
Yeah, I've actually done a fair bit of research on that, and we could dig into that a little deeper at the right time. I don't know that I want to. Let's keep moving with your presentation, but yes, I have some more information to share about that.
Great. Okay. And then, of course, we established a parking enterprise fund, a fund and a financial line item, which, of course, as everyone knows, takes time to build up that fund. We have to have a safeguard in there to support them as their own little department now, because they're not under the city, they're under the enterprise. So that's one sometimes people don't understand, like our water enterprise and sewer is not supported by the general fund of the city. It's its own business per se. And so that's the same thing now with the parking department, mobility department. That money we have to make sure we have enough saved up. So we have the badge years if they come up, and then we have money eventually we can put in to help them with mobility and parking projects. So that's the goal there as we're moving on that. Goal number 4, implement onboarding process. And I believe, Bill, you guys did a great job on an onboarding program and ideas with that. That's something I don't know if we're ready to roll out, but I think it was close, and that would be easy to get moving on from there. Goal number 5, continued support of the traffic calming board. No plan to disband that board. You know, the TMMP brought that into play. Public Works did a great job getting it off the ground. I know that Carl's on that board. Plans are to continue it and move forward on supporting neighborhoods that want to talk about traffic calming, which I have some exciting news as we move. Well, maybe I should tell you now. Basically, Governor Polis signed into act that states that cities now can look at neighborhood streets and decide on reducing their speed limits like by 5 miles per hour without a major engineer study. And they can do that by looking at safety precautions and issues that are in those neighborhoods, like no sidewalks, cars parked on the streets and making it narrow, windy mountainous roads. When I look at some of our neighborhoods, they're fast. I mean, if you go to Pilot Knob, I've saw a couple of 20-mile-per-hour signs, and I'm thinking, how do you do that? Because I've tried, and it's really scary thing to do, to try to navigate that narrow road. And so there's a lot more studies now too, proving that lowering the speed limit 5 or 10 miles per hour does save lives and does reduce traffic accidents. So with that combination, I reached out to the city attorney already to get permission to start doing the study, whatever it takes, which won't be as critical. We can do it in-house, look at neighborhoods and make some decisions to make some 5 mile per hour reductions pretty simply if we need to, and to make them safer. Yeah, Carl.
Sorry, that's great news, Roy. You've said it twice and I can't restrain myself. So the current terminology is we want to say crash and not accident. Accident says there's nothing we can change. And obviously changing the speed limit indicates that there's other issues in the infrastructure. And so crash is the proper term. Sorry.
No, don't be sorry. And that's a good point, because an accident says it can be avoided, but I don't know if you can, if you go on 30 miles per hour in a zone that should be 15, right? So yeah, crash. So, but you might have to remind me a few more times. But crash, we're going to try to reduce crashes. I like that. All right, so let me keep moving on here. Plan for implement the use of micromobility citywide. We are going to meet with Colorado Springs soon, the engineer out there who implemented the skateboard policies, and just find out how things are going, because it's time to talk about it since it's going to come here. We already see the boards. It's just a matter of time when there's going to be more. It is a mobility option for people. So we might as well be realistic and say, well, how do we get ahead of this a little bit and be ready? An interesting thing of one of the studies in Denver, not a study, but council required, which was very interesting. They said that they're going to make an ordinance that says they are welcome skateboarders or scooters, as long as that they can geofence the sidewalks directly. So in other words, they can make all the sidewalks geofenced out of the zone. So if someone decides to go on a sidewalk with one of these electronic or electric bikes or skateboards, it won't work. And so they will allow it as long, but now all these skateboard companies, everything, they're gonna have to find to be able to do that, the technology to do it. And I think they probably will. So we're maybe getting a little ahead, but we want to be a little ahead on discussions and keep watching as they continue some of that new type of controls for this. So that's plan 6. Or goal 6. We plan on still discussing, getting information in 2023 over the summer to be able to bring back to the board as well things that we found out about this. Things that are not on that list that we are looking at, the tram shuttle pilot. So Dole and I have been researching a long time. You guys know about the trolley, like EV trolley, very expensive. But we thought, we started researching for trams, we call them. I don't think that's an official name, but they're a small kind of golf cart, and they can hold like 24 people, I think up to 28 maybe, and they're electric. And so then we could possibly, if we did diagonal parking, rear diagonal further down, and 7-Eleven and whatever satellite parking areas, we can actually have this thing scooting back and forth into town and get people from driving in town, but park there, take this nice shuttle, and it keeps moving and bringing people in there. We can also consider going more into, in the summer at least, because it's kind of a summer item, but go into, down the Beckers and go, and also for the residents in the evenings, picking them up if they want to come in. So we're looking at doing that, and these only cost about $60,000 each. And so we are looking at that as a possibility, and may have a grant for it. So we're hoping that the grant comes in this month from CDOT. El Paso Boulevard and Lovers Lane, street calming, mobility improvement. I think I already this has been discussed, but we are talking with CDOT about a street light at Deer, possibly in El Paso, but we also don't want to move too fast with the Hiawatha project, because I think Joy says it always best when I first met her was unintended consequences. And so we want to make sure that we look at what they're doing at Hiawatha and how it may affect anything else we do near Hiawatha. So, but we are talking to them. They are going to put a no block area there, which means some X's in the zone that you can't block the intersection. It might still help the shuttle bus get a left-hand turn, which is one of our goals, to get them off at El Paso, because that's hazardous for the big bus to drive down. So we're trying to get them back on Manitou Avenue. And so we're looking at that this summer with them. And we may have a couple of things we can try and see if Mountain Metro wants to try the no block law and see if that works. Rear diagonal parking, again, possibly expansion. Of course, we got to talk to council first on the pilot. So as Corey stated, that's important we do that and soon. 7-Eleven employee parking event overflow parking. Again, if we get the tram, the idea is get employees, possible visitors to park there and help with some and the rear diagonal in that area, help with them getting into town, because that's one of the critical complaints. Incline reservation system, we're going to continue monitoring that like we do. We meet with the incline group from Colorado Springs every quarter at a minimum, at a maximum, I should say, and then or at a minimum, and then a maximum we go like once a month. So sometimes we expand it, and if anytime we have an issue, we reach out to them. Big one that we decided on was hiring an experienced transportation director. And Carl, I heard you. The hard part is that mobility still being such a new thing, it's going to be hard to find someone with a lot of mobility experience. But if we get someone with good experience and at a higher level thinking of transportation as a whole, which I know in Europe they're starting to call it just transportation, because that affects every aspect of parking and mobility. Then my goal and job is to make sure they understand the high level of mobility we want to have here. So that's my job. That's going to be the board's job. It's going to be that they understand mobility is at the top of our list of trying to improve. But with their skill level, we do believe that they can provide a lot of insight, probably even wherever they come from. So we'll see, and we'll cross our fingers. Honk reservation pilot at Hiawatha, again, we'll continue that going. 7-Eleven, we'll work on that, and possibly bar. Progressive parking will continue, and every quarter we'll reevaluate and make the changes as necessary. Downtown and the neighborhoods, we're improving signage now with on the speed limit sign. It reminds them there's pedestrians in the road as well. And then, of course, if we can lower the speed limits, that's going to be part of our goal when we're changing these out. Bike ride pilot, no longer a pilot, so it's going to continue, and we're going to expand upon it this summer. So that's already been decided. Hiawatha parking improvements, we're going to beautify the facility regardless of what we can get done at this point with the bathrooms. We're going to fix that building up. It's been requested by council that we beautify it some more and make it look good. And the parking lot will if anyone saw the council meeting last night, there's this GeoGrid. I don't know if I forgot what it's called now. It's a plastic 100% recyclable grid that's really strong that it can even be made for parking lots, and then you put aggregate in it, and it's permeable, so the water can go through this. And we're thinking that in that area in Hiawatha where it's flooding in the center, where we think there's either groundwater or a spring, we'll be able to put that in there and it'll drain out easy. So if it does work, we may change the whole parking lot to this permeable surface in the future. But again, we have to work with the Hiawatha group to make sure we're not wasting time or money by putting it in wrong places. But this, and then it has really cool little dots you can make the lanes in, so you don't have to repave it anymore. You don't have to use pavement, and you don't have to stripe the lines anymore. I mean, it's just permanent. And then you can pull it out at whenever you want to. If you decide you don't want a parking lot anymore, this stuff just can be pulled out of the ground and we're done. So really exciting. And we're going to do some pilot areas on this. Let me see. The rickshaw pilot will consider, it's not a pilot really anymore. It's moving on, and others can apply if they want to have any kind of bike program. We'll see where it can happen. We'll look at additional satellite parking opportunities. The coffin races was a good example of a wonderful program that worked. And so we're going to continue to talk, like with the marathon. We already talked about how we're going to try to support that too with them. So they're thinking about things. And then a big one, and Bill reminded me of this one, and it can never be forgotten, but we do plan, and talking with Luke already, and I know I talked with administration there at the COG, having a meeting in April and talking about parking up there and see what things that we need, what they need, and try to work together. They've been a good partner in the past 2 years when they reopened. I know their reservation system's on the right track. It takes a little time to get that going. We want to talk about the congestion when parking leaves the COG. Seems to be the biggest issue at this point, and how we can try to meter that a little better. But the goal is to meet with them and have a good discussion on plans. And like I said, they've been open to that from the time they reopened the facility. So we're going to continue with that good relationship. So that's planned as well in 2023. So those are the things that we're going to keep moving forward on, along with everything that we have going. And I, from my aspect, and just like with James, I mean, we'll do what it takes. And if we have to do a board, we'll do boards. It's our job. We appreciate what everyone does. In my case, and Corey's right, I had to make some decisions. Right now, Public Works needs my support. I spent a lot of time with parking in the past 4 years. I'm still responsible for parking, but if I can get someone with some more experience in parking and mobility, then we need to give them our goals, and they need to follow through on those goals, and that includes mobility. So, but that allows me to direct them, and then know they can go and do these things. But everything still has to be vetted and checked, and not just someone's going to go and do what they want. And if they're just, when we do the interviews, there's going to be a lot of questions about mobility, and I need to know what they know about mobility, so we know how to educate them if they end up getting the job. So I'm committed to make sure that happens, so the board understands mobility is high on my list. I've been directed by council on that. I take it very seriously, and we're not going to just go to parking, but we do have parking issues we got to address as well. So that's all I have in my presentation. And I will, this is something that after I listen to everybody, and I hope you all know I do try to listen, and I would think that maybe instead of fourth quarter, we meet in September, third quarter, and then depending on where we go, because I agree with Luke 100% and Joy and Carl, I can't remember who said those things, but we need to find out what council wants from this board. How do they best serve council? And then when we meet in September, we decide on all that and how we're moving forward. And then maybe the next month we go ahead and meet and we start discussing the goals and plans. And so I would be okay with that. It would give us some time to work this summer on these issues. We'd have more data coming back in. And that's to help with cutting back a little bit the time that I felt everyone had some concerns with. It was a bit too long. It gets us through the summer, gets us some data, and we'll come back strong, and a transportation director who I have a chance to get them updated and ready to rock and roll. So that's my offer as well. And so now I'll leave it up to you, to Bill, on how you want to go from here.
Thank you, Roy. I think several of us may have questions. So Corey, you had some information and questions. Do you want to open up on that?
Well, I mean, I've got some information that I could share related to the discussion about data specifically. I do have a list of questions, but I don't think we want to go into detail right now about
Right.
about the discussions I've had with City of Colorado Springs and the PPACG folks about, you know, there's a whole lot of options. There's streetlights very expensive. And there are some other considerations about where the funding for that comes from that we probably want to consider as we look at some data. But Bill, since you called on me, I'm wondering if I mean what I'm thinking right now as a proposal or a compromise is that, you know, instead of icing the committee entirely until October, maybe we could agree to meet less frequently until October. You know, if we had 2 meetings between now and October, a less frequent basis, I would say, not requiring any staff updates. And we also could take the burden of taking notes off of staff, but we would still meet twice between now and October and try to continue some of the important work that you know, that we think might be relevant for our group. So that's what I'd like to propose as a compromise.
Okay, other comments,
Well,
questions? Go
I
ahead.
wanted to
Right.
thank Roy for all the work that's been done and all the effort, and even this report and PowerPoint that you have. It's pretty amazing when you see it all written down, what we've done and where we're going. So I want to do that. I agree with Roy, though, on meeting in September, giving the staff and everyone time to bring on a new director and to gather the data and then meet in September and make things in October. I would agree with that.
Okay, Carl, your thoughts?
I guess, given Roy's comments about trying to have meaningful conversations with staff, Denise, and council about the kind of purpose of the board and the relationship and communication, I'm probably fine waiting until September to meet and then moving forward from that point.
Okay, Rolf,
I would prefer us to meet once a quarter. Not meeting twice, but maybe meeting in the second quarter and then again in the third quarter.
Luke,
Man, it's a tough one. It really is. I really think that having public feedback and community involvement is crucial. It's as hands down and as easy as I can simplify it. For that reason, I love the counter offers on the table to meet just a few times between now and September, and possibly not even having a very large agenda, just to say, hey, how it's going. And that way we can say, honestly, it's just to say we've met, right? And just touch base and not feel disbanded. Because what I don't want is to come back in October and feel like, wow, that whole summer had passed. What happened? And just feeling like we're just catching up. I think it's really important for us to stay in tune with what's going on. So I love the 2 proposals to at least touch base a little bit throughout the season. And again, maybe not having a full agenda of topics to discuss, but just hearing a quick update. Maybe making it a short 1 hour instead of the 5 hours that we're used to.
Roy, do you want to respond to some of the comments or get your thoughts? You said you brought up September as a possible meeting date. Is there any flexibility that to be able to get information during the summer? Is that going to be a burden for you? Certainly we can, you know, as far as the minutes thing, we can get volunteers, I think, maybe just from this board to write up some minutes if that's a ironclad requirement. And with regard to staff, gee, I've seen boards that have operated without staff in the past. I'm not quite certain that that's an absolute ironclad requirement. But having a report, even if it's short and sweet and limited to 1 hour, might be a reasonable compromise. Is that something that is even on the table and from your point of view?
Well, I don't, I guess I propose my thoughts to September so that we just don't worry about it. But I'm not opposed to an hour meeting. I don't know if it'll really go an hour. That's part of the struggle. Easily
Yes.
conversation. So I got to be realistic that, and it does require work for us to prepare for that meeting, no matter what. I think that if you want data, we're going to have to, and how things are going. I don't know how loose that is. So I guess there's a lot of questions on if it will become a meeting and just at least it's only quarterly, I suppose. That's helpful for now. But it is one more thing. And I don't know if people always understand how much work it takes to get ready for meetings regardless. But again, that's better than I think what we're doing now. It does give some break. I do understand the connection part. But my original thing, the September kind of stands for me, but it's not my choice. At the end of the day, the board can vote on that and decide, and then staff will do what's necessary and support.
Okay, thank you, Roy.
You're welcome.
Further comments or thoughts on this issue?
I just think we should support staff in their request. If you can get things electronically, you can go to the council meetings, remotely, you can gather. For me to gather to have our meeting and catch up with people, my time is very valuable too, and I have obligations and things in my time, and to have something where we're just meeting to keep in touch and look at data, to me, isn't a good use of my time. So it was my input on that.
Well, let me just provide my thoughts on it. I would support staff September meeting. And if there's some issues that come up during the summer that staff wants to bring to the board, even informally as information, I think that's totally appropriate. And I don't think we'd be breaking any kind of city law or municipal code law or anything else, but probably we want to research that a little bit. But I think that might be a good way. We still have information transfer, and as long as we don't burden staff down with a bunch of questions and a long meeting, as we have been doing, which I take responsibility for not making those meetings shorter, and I apologize for that. But we really need to listen to staff and support them on this, I feel. So that's my view. So having said all that, I'm looking for a motion.
Bill,
and
I'd like to make a motion if I could.
Okay, Corey.
Yeah, so having heard all of that and input and greatly and really weighing it, I'd like to propose that we that our board reduces meeting frequency such that we meet once during the summer and then reconvene again in September, with the plan that September will be our the retreat and the visioning plan that we had envisioned, that we had proposed and agreed on, that was going to be in January. September will give us time to do that. So my proposal is that we meet once in June and then again in September to move ahead with that sort of retreat idea and resetting of the committee, sort of a major retreat in September. And sorry, that wasn't very concise. The proposal is that we meet twice, once in June and then again in September. And in September is when we would redecide the frequency moving forward.
Okay. That's a motion, correct?
I second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Discussion on the motion.
I can
Anybody have
go
any
either.
strong opinions?
I'm not wedded to anything, and I do want to support Staff, Roy's done a incredible job, and if he feels that strongly, obviously, this proposal would go down, but I thought this would be a good way that would keep us going and meeting. If our meetings are shorter and if we all abide by, we don't have to comment on everything, maybe it would be better. So anyway, I support that motion that Corey just did.
Corey, can you clarify what you envision the June meeting? Are you thinking of that being a short meeting, like an hour? Limited agenda, just to check in, or are you thinking that would be a full formal? You're on mute, Corey. Sorry, can't hear you.
Sorry, I was muted. I don't want to include that much detail as part of this motion. What I would say is that I don't have an expectation that we would need staff reports, or, I mean, certainly nothing in addition to what staff is already doing. I frankly think some of the reporting that we get about the parking enterprise numbers are a little bit irrelevant, and so I don't really overall support reports specifically for this board on all those numbers. But a short staff report about, hey, here's some things that we're seeing and what we're experiencing this summer. You know, I don't want to make it burdensome, so I would volunteer to take notes, and I wouldn't ask staff for any specific data or anything specifically, and I don't necessarily want to limit the meeting to a certain number of hours. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I do. I don't think that's the right way to do it. I think we should try to meet and have a meaningful catch up once before September, in June-ish.
You know, I have to say that, you know, it sounds like we're devaluating ourselves, that we can do a meeting without staff, we can do it without reports, we can do it without this and without that and limit the time. It's like either we support or we don't. And I can't support meeting in June for a catch-up. I just think that's, we've been asked and requested something from staff that they're asking for. I think it's reasonable. I think that we're all adults, and if you need to catch up with someone, you can call them and catch up. But I just, either we support or we don't support, but having a meeting, having run many meetings and many kinds of things in my career, it takes a lot to do a meeting. It's not just gathering some stuff here and there and then doing that. There's a lot that goes into planning a meeting, getting it written, getting it goals. And minute taking is something, you know, if we don't need someone taking minutes, then we shouldn't have it during the regular board meetings either. It's like, let's support the staff request. And that's where I am on it.
And I as well support Roy's proposal that we meet in September. And so but I'm going to call the question here unless anybody else has anything to say. Hearing nothing on the motion that Corey proposed, that's a meeting in June, short meeting, I gather, and then a full-out retreat in September. Do I correctly interpret what you said, Corey?
Yep, that's right. Thank you, Bill.
Okay. So having said all that, all in favor of Corey's motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, 3. 1, 2, hands again, please. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. That appears to pass. The question for staff is.
Bill, you need to call the negative vote that next.
Yeah, you're right. Those opposed to Corey's motion.
Opposed.
Okay. Well, I would suggest the motion passes 4-2. I would suggest that we ask Roy to tailor something that he can live with and staff can live with among all the other things that they got to do. Is that going to be an impossible thing, certainly you can do it, Roy, but is this too much for you?
No, we can do it. We'll, let me think about,
You
we would-
develop the structure of the
Yeah.
meeting. How
Yeah.
about that,
sure, I mean, it's gotta be a value to the meeting, right? So,
right?
um,
And let's limit the time to an hour. Would that help?
I'll just try to maybe a summary of how the summer's going, you know, something like that, but let me think
Okay.
about that and see what I can produce that's worth a meeting, because just to meet to me is like Joy said, I don't know if that's worth the time, but if there's something of value to it, then it's worth it.
Well-
So see if I can
Well,
develop.
let's leave it like, if there's something that is valuable, let's report it. If there's nothing valuable in June that you feel that needs to be passed on, now that doesn't inhibit you from passing on information just as information. And maybe we not have a June meeting because of the information flow. The other comment that I'm sensitive to is public input. And where's that public input going to go? It's probably going to go to council, or it's going to land on your desk. And so we need to think about how that's handled. Yes, okay, I'm rattling on. Luke, go ahead.
I've got a question. Just so let's say we just come back together in September, right? The original thought was for us to reconvene, see how the summer went, and analyze our mission and vision and have a big hurrah, right? Just to everybody say, okay, where are we going from here? When I think of a June meeting, it's analyzing not just how the summer's going so far, but really understanding the parking director, right? That new position, where he envisions our help thus far. Talking with council in the next crucial few months, right? And it's just to touch base, yeah, we're gonna know what's happening in the summer. And to Joy's point, she's absolutely right. If we want to be caught up on what's happening, we can go to the city council and follow along, right? But
Right.
I'm thinking towards the importance of this June meeting for me is to just test the water as to where are we? Are we going to come to September and say, wow, we're going to disband entirely, right? Is there even an importance of us moving forward? I think that's where my necessity of the June meeting lies, is just to say, hey, what's coming? What's coming in September? So that's my thought on it. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the staff reports. I think it more so needs to back up even further and to say, hey, where's our mission vision, right? Like, what is happening so far, so that we can kind of anticipate that coming in September, and we can think on it ourselves. I mean, that's the big thing. I don't want to come into September and just walk up to a wall and say, hey, look, everybody thinks that you're not, you know. So anyway, that's my thought on it.
Appreciate it. Further comments?
I think the motion is passed. The debate is over. The direct question for staff is, can you support the meeting that was just requested and passed by the board?
Well, we have to, so yes.
Okay, so we should move to the next agenda item.
Awfully abrupt, Corey, sometimes. The way you talk is so abrupt.
Well, I mean, we're all sensitive to the amount of time it takes. Why are we talking about a motion that we just passed? Let's keep moving.
Excuse me,
Okay,
Corey, I
just-
think we need to settle.
Okay, well, I mean, do you feel there's more that needs to be
Hey,
said? We had
hey,
a discussion period.
hey,
We called
let's-
the question and we voted. So
Corey.
what's the next process?
Corey,
Corey,
Just-
stop.
stop, okay? We're
Mr.
moving on
Chair,
to the next item.
please run the meeting.
Well, that's what I'm trying to do, if you'd be quiet
Thank
for
you.
a minute. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Roy, do you have, the next item is item 5, reports. Do you have anything to report?
Yeah, just letting the group know that in May, we're gonna be doing ADA improvements on Duclos. So just so you're all aware, and so there's gonna be some street shut down in that area, but it is not a visitor road. So we'll do our best and we have to do it in the summer, of course, but we're gonna fix sidewalks up, things like that. That was money from the CDBG grant. So we're gonna be working on ADA. And Nate? I think that's all. I guess I'll tell you one more thing that, so with some, research with using for snow and that affects mobility, snow plowing. So we, reached out to CDOT after we did some research, and we're using magnesium chloride as a pre-treat on the roads, which is a salt, 2 salts, but you know, our sand is also cut with salt. But sand is harsh on the environment, the sand salt, because it gets scattered everywhere. So we're using mag chloride as a spot treatment, and you'll see these lines on the road sometimes. So like before this storm, or on sidewalks, and you'll see these lines, and people are asking, what are these lines? And what it does is when the snow hits it, it starts melting already and solving our problem. And it makes it not adhere, so we can scrape it off easier. But it's a more environmental friendly approach. It works better. And we were able to get that free through CDOT because we were getting free sand salt. Now we're just getting some of this chloride, and we got the tank to put it down. So it helps in our whole mobility process, not just vehicles, but we really are starting to focus on, you know, everything with snowplowing was to get the car across the be able to drive to where they need to go. And we're trying to focus outside that and get to the mobility pathways on the side of the streets and the sidewalks as well, and the creek walk trail, et cetera. And so that's the importance on what we're changing right now in our snow plowing techniques. And then if you didn't hear last night, they approved the concrete path on the creek walk, so it stays continuous throughout town on that new section. So that's going to be great too for another mobility path for bikes and walking, and you know, probably scooters or whatever else gets on that. But that's my report that I have for you.
Thank you. I applaud you for moving to mag chloride because I think it's more environmentally and pet friendly. I use it myself, so anyway. Okay. We don't have a city council person here tonight, so there is no liaison report. Did she leave us anything in the way of a written report?
She didn't leave a written report. She did tell me that she supports the map break. And she is okay with that and understands that, and then looking at how we're going to move forward into fall with the maps forward. So,
Okay.
but otherwise I don't have a report from her.
Okay. Now is our time to talk about board correspondence and anything anybody wants to bring up. Golf.
So do we have any applications received yet for our position, Roy?
Yes, we have a few applications, some pretty impressive. And we'll keep it open a bit longer. Somewhere, you know, we look through them and we get rid of those that I don't know why they apply. You know how you get when you get Indeed, and you get people that never even drove a car applying. So you know, or know even what a bike is. And it's pretty amazing when people apply for anything, but we're getting some really high quality candidates with some experience.
Great. And when is the time frame you might decide or do interviews?
Yeah, so I'm waiting to kind of see if I have enough enough applications first. So that kind of is play it by ear a little bit. The idea was to go at least till the end of the month. And then from there, the way I do it is I narrow down to make sure we get the strongest candidates based on their applications and resumes. I normally do a phone interview with them for 15 minutes to ask some specific questions, narrow it down further, and then about maybe 5 or 6, maybe less, I doubt more, will be the final group that the hiring board will interview. And then from there, I'll get their feedback and then make a decision on the top 1 or 2, and then they'll meet Denise and we'll make a final decision. So there's a chance it could take, you know, up to 2 months. When I did the Park and Recreation Director, it took about probably about 2 months, a month and a half. And we've been real successful doing it that way with finding people. So.
Roy, could you talk a little bit about the map board involvement in that, in the hiring process?
Yes, so I did ask if anyone had one person interest to join the hiring board. The rest of the board will be staff, different departments in the staff. And so it's nice to have, like I did with Parab, I had one Parab folk and one OSAC for the Park and Rec on that board, and then the rest were staff. And then they score, they just send me the scores. It helps with the decision process for the staff to make decisions.
And so as a board, we've been invited to let you know of our interest in that. And my only suggestion would be, you know, whoever is able to take that role, hopefully would bring back whatever appropriate information could share, or just give the board a little update about how that process went when it happens.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. I think it's important to just talk about, how things went. Of course, we want to keep everyone private on and protecting their, not necessarily discuss their details of possibly the interviews, but yeah, saying how things went or whatever. Sure, I think that's fine.
I've got a question. We continue to hear about the, shall I say, the lack of symmetry between us and the Metro District. And having attended Metro District board meetings in this role several years ago for a couple of years, I can fully understand that we're not in sync with each other, so to speak. And Bob brought it up, and as we know, at one of our meetings, and I'm thinking that there ought to be a way in which we can figure out a way to work together or fix the problem, because I still see this as a problem, and it's impeding our ability to make progress in certain areas. And I don't know how the rest of you feel, but it strikes me that we've got to do better on this particular issue. And I don't have any great suggestions for it, but other than dialogue and trying to work together. But and maybe I toss this one to you, Rolf. What are your thoughts?
Well, I disagree. I think our relationship has been
Okay.
great lately, and we are up and ready to listen to everyone. And we want to partner with the city. We don't want to go on our own. And we are following what Roy and what Kevin was saying all along. And I know we didn't do exactly what they wanted, but we're really close. Slow improvements. And I really think it's going to get better and better. And we want to partner. And any concerns, please bring them to me and just say, hey, this is the problem. And then I will try to fix it immediately. And I don't think anybody's trying to be the way it was a couple years ago. So,
Well, that's really good news because it was pretty ugly.
I know
I
it was,
can tell you that.
and I know that we, whatever, I mean, 90% of what Roy asks or what Kevin was asking or Roy, we agreed to, and we have for a long time. And I know we go to the city only when we have problems, but that's just the nature of it. So we don't say all the great things that the city has done to help us. And when we talk privately, we all agree that we want to be partners with the city and let them lead and be a partnership. And I really am sorry that you guys don't feel that way about us. And I want to fix that. And
Hey, Rolf,
please.
and Mr. Chair, could I just say, I mean, I don't
No,
feel that
hold
we're
on,
not.
Corey.
Hmm.
Carl was first.
Oh, excuse me.
Carl.
I was just gonna say, I thought at least recently, the Metro District has been a good partner, right? They
Okay.
were receptive to putting a bike rack at the Wichita lot, as well as the school crossing, allowing the temporary parking in the morning for the school crossing. I mean, so they've, taken input and requests and been receptive to those, and it's felt like a partnership, and maybe that's just those two instances, but that's my view, and I thank Rolf and the Metro District for being receptive to that.
Well, that's real progress to hear. I guess I go back to the days of the Wichita garage, and I assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, that is not going to happen.
Let's
Is that
not go
correct?
back to that, because that was not the proper way to go, and are just going to do it and ram it down everyone's throat. So those days are completely gone. We've
Okay.
had different personnel now. We have a different leader now, and honestly, we are. I know we complain to the city a lot about, oh, we're not cutting our trees down, whatever. Those are just superficial. We are wanting the city to lead on this, and I mean that, and we all do. So
Great. Well, that's good news. And I haven't been to one of your board meetings lately, so and I appreciate the feedback. Thank you for correcting the record, so to speak, with me. Corey, your turn.
Yeah, just to comment on the Metro District, I would echo what Carl said, and I'm optimistic about constructive partnership work moving forward. And so, Rolf, I will reach out to you and coordinate a way to try to engage a bit more with the Metro District. Maybe that's an opportunity I'll take now that we're going to have a little bit of time off between now and September. And then, Mr. Chair, did you want me to jump into my board correspondence, or were there other comments about Metro you wanted to process?
No, yeah, I just brought it up and to ask the question, where are we with Metro? So, and that's been answered very well,
Okay.
which I appreciate.
If I can get into board correspondence then.
Sure, go for it. But we're running a little bit short on time, so let's condense it down to being brief, if you would.
Gotcha. Okay, well, I've got a few things that I did want to go through. I wanted to start by saying thank you for all the things that have been happening in the TMMP and for the people that were involved. I think that's you, Bill, Joy, and I assume also Rolf was involved in that. And we're grateful for that. And there's been a lot of improvements. So thankful for that. On the discussion about El Paso and the Mobility Boulevard, I wanted to let you know I had a discussion with Colorado Springs staff today, and they're looking at putting a signalized light at 31st and Pikes Peak. And the expectation is that will be in place by May of this year. So that will increase the impetus for that as a mobility corridor. So that's moving along from the Colorado Springs side. I wondered if we could make a request for staff if we have moved past pilot stage with Pike Ride, and I think the rickshaw thing. I wonder if we could get a little announcement about that and celebrate the fact that we had a successful pilot with those, and that we're moving forward with those as a permanent thing. Is that something reasonable to ask about, Roy?
Yeah, let me ask Denise. I'm not sure how that looks like, but yeah, it's beyond pilot at this point, because the agreement from council was a year, I think, and we passed that, and then we had to move forward. But let me ask Denise what that would look like. I'm not sure what you're thinking, but sure, I think it could be cool.
Well, it's a thing to celebrate, I think, and would love to celebrate that we had a successful pilot and moved into permanent. I note that there's a process going on with Ruxton, and it seems like the kind of thing that our board, if everything were working right, it'd be nice if our board had a role in supporting staff in the work that's going on with the Ruxton corridor study. So I'm hearing that from neighbors. I wanted to let everyone know I test drove the RPP process. I got my RPP sticker, and I think we still have a ways to go with educating residents about how to get their 50 free hours of parking and exactly how that system works. So I'm hearing that from some neighbors, and I'm trying to share the information that they ought to go down to the parking office. In my understanding, the online RPP thing wasn't quite working as well as it ought to, and it's actually a little easier if you show up in person with your car registration. Is that accurate, Roy?
Yeah, it was, you know, whenever you start something new, we found some issues with that. But we learned from this first year and we'll plan on improvements into next year. But yes, it was more difficult, but that's kind of happens the first go around. But so far, so good now. I think a lot of people got their RPP permits. And some had to do it the old fashioned way and come on in and say hi. But we
Well, that's what I did.
things.
That's what I did. And I asked James a lot of questions, and overall, it seemed to me that it was a fairly labor intensive process to process those. So hopefully in the future that can get easier for staff. It's, you know, that seemed like an obvious place where some staff time savings could be had. So
Good input. Thank you, Corey. Good input.
You know, there was a lot of discussion today, and well, I want to echo the concerns that Carl raised about the new transportation director and the job description being very focused on parking. I think today there are a lot of qualified candidates that have got experience with parking and transportation and mobility. And so, however that moves forward, I will add my strongest encouragement that we really look for someone that's got documented skills related to transportation and not just parking. Those people are surely out there and would love to work in Manitou. That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey. Anybody else have anything to offer? Okay, entertain a
Hey,
motion to adjourn.
Bill, one more thing real quick from me.
Yes, Roy.
I should
Go ahead.
announce this. I just want to say thanks to the Mobility and Parking Department because they have stepped up to help with snow plowing in the parking lots. And so when it's a snow day, they come in and they plow the Metro District, Smitsney, Hiawatha, and they're helping with that because of course there's not as much parking going on during the snowstorm. But they have really stepped up and helped the Public Works crew that's already understaffed during those times. So I just want everyone to know that they are truly stepping up whenever we need them, and we appreciate it.
Great. Okay, how about a motion to adjourn, folks?
I move that
wants
we
to make-
adjourn, Bill.
Is there a second? Corey seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Right.
Those opposed, say no. Nobody. Thank
Right.
you all for attending. We really appreciate it.
See you in June.
Thanks,
Okay.
everyone. Stay warm.
All
Thank
right,
you.
thank you.